grown like about 1.5% a year. But you will see extreme population projections for every single city, county, state across the United States put out by the Census Bureau, saying that we are about to be inundated by huge numbers of people. And since we are using up nature, we need to be able to put those people somewhere. Where are we going to put those people? Here's this crisis. We're going to have to put them in smart growth in the center of your town. So, why you need linkages for the animals to get together so that Bambi can get together with Bambo. It's linkages and corridors. So what's unsustainable? Dams, reservoirs. You might use that water. Erosion control, flood control, brush cutting, forest management. How about those fires in the West? They've been releasing wild carnivores into the wild. In Florida, they're releasing the wild Florida panther. They're releasing wolves in the Northeast, bringing back wild carnivores into the wild. You'll find that your land, when you own land in the rural areas, you are restricted with view sheds, ridge lines, biotic resources, streamside thresholds. These are regulatory restrictions. As an appraiser, one of my last jobs, I just have retired. One of the last things I did was I appraised a 1,400-acre ranch. I wanted to know what the guy could do with it. I went to the county. Pretty much nothing. 1,400 acres, right next to the freeway. So then I went around and I checked into other properties that had sold recently. I said, what have you been able to do with your property? This one guy said to me, Rosa, we've got 1,000 acres here. It's taken us 10 years to get permits to put one house on it. We had to donate 400 acres to the Sonoma County Land Trust in order to do that. Regulatory takings. I call it the no-pay APA. The American Planning Association, in Growing Smart Legislative Guidebook, tells planners how not to compensate you for your property rights. That book is compiled. It's a compilation of some of the worst restrictions on property that you have ever seen. And it's incremental. Well, we don't think we can pull this off quite yet in Concord, but we're going to try this one and we'll work up to it. This is what you see. You know, when we're talking about linkages and corridors, just think about this one. Yellowstone to Yukon. Yellowstone to Yukon. That's a long way. Now think about the corridor that runs between Canada and the United States, down the eastern shore, across the southern part, and up the western part of the United States. They don't own these corridors, do they? So there has to be restriction on your use so that animals can progress from one area to the other. Some of these are a half a state wide. Restrictions, conservation easements that split your title. Conservation easements are a racket. Loss of agriculture and a loss of tax base. You find that you have less and less people in the rural areas. Now people say, well, hey, no one's pushing me off of my rural land. I've got my well here. I'm doing fine. I've got my 30 acres, my 60 acres, my 2 acres, whatever I have. I'm doing great here. Nobody's pushing me off. Think about this. Closure of postal services in the rural areas. Closure of schools out in the rural areas. Monitoring of wells. Well monitoring is coming. ICLEI has a water campaign that they're rolling out in Southeast Asia and Australia that is coming our way. This will monitor and control all water across the United States. They've got it right here, and it says that water has to be managed as a finite economic resource. I guess it never rains. Charges for water must reflect the true value of water resources. This means that your water costs, if you're an agricultural producer, your water costs need to be low so that you can produce food for our country. we are going to see tremendous costs, tremendous increase in costs for water. You see misidentification of wetlands all across the United States. Something else you're going to see if you're out in a rural area, I live in a rural county, 1,384 miles of rural roads, county roads. Our county supervisors about 2 years ago said, you know what, there just isn't enough money to pave those. We're only going to be paving 150 miles of that 1,384 miles of county roads, and the rest will be pulverized and turned to gravel. Think that's going to impact your property value, your ability to get to your property, to bring your goods to market? And did you know, I'm sure you do know, that the federal government, the federal funding system for transportation favors more urban populated areas, no matter how many roads you have. And here in New Hampshire, you've got the Innovative Land Use Planning Techniques Handbook for Sustainable Development. Innovative Land Use Planning Techniques Handbook for Sustainable Development, put out by the Department of Environmental Sciences and the Association of Regional Planning Commissions. These involve transfer of development rights from the rural areas to the city centers so that you can build higher and higher and denser buildings in your city centers. Land banks that will sell credits, development credits, and conservation easements. You know, we're dealing with something right now. We're dealing with with a shocking experience where the people are at war with their government. And it happens parcel by parcel. So people do not know that this is happening all across the United States. Now, I know you've probably heard of the Sacketts. That's the couple in Idaho that was living next to that lake, near a lake, on an incline. They got their permit to build their house, and they started their land moving. And here comes the EPA knocking on their air there and said, hey, you got to stop this because you've got a wetland here. And they said, we got our permits. They said, we don't care if you have permits. We're going to fine you $37,000 a day. You have to put your land back the way it was. So they fought. They went to the Supreme Court. What did they get? What did they win? It's an outrage that they went all the way to the United States Supreme Court on a case like this. But what did they win? That means that the EPA appealed it every time they lost. So what happens? They get all the way up there. What did they win? They won the right to a hearing to challenge the government's threats to fine them for building on their own land. They had to win the right to challenge the federal government. You want to check out the nonprofits. This is what it is. This is unelected boards and commissions. This is breaking your jurisdictional boundaries. This is the erection of a new layer of bureaucracy. And it is connected all through corporations, nonprofits, and government partnering together. Federal government, nonprofits, and corporations, as well as state and local governments as well. What you're seeing here, I think this would be something good to take a look at. When I was talking about mega regions, you want to look at America2050.org. That is a plan of the Regional Plan Association. They have a project, it's called Northeast Landscapes. It gives grants to new nonprofits to partner with established nonprofits so that they can learn how to pressure for smart growth. This is what it's designed to do. So they need a comprehensive regional approach beyond property boundaries and beyond jurisdictions. This is what it's designed to do. It is designed to find that you're actually fighting against not just the federal government, but you're fighting against nonprofits that are funded through grants from the federal government and from corporations. Agenda 21 is a plan to produce social equity by impoverishing populations and creating total dependence on government. This is what it's about. Public-private partnerships are about the public taking the risk and the private sector getting the profit. And you won't see anything worse than public-private partnerships with prisons. Privately owned prisons. What does it take? What do prisons need? They need prisoners. How do you get more prisoners? You make more things crime. And this is what we're looking at. Under the cover of environmentalism, the rigid control of a totalitarian state is in progress right now. That is what is behind the green mask. The abuse of our trust. That's what this is. They have hijacked the environmental movement. It's not what you say, it's what you do. All of the rhetoric sounds so good. It all looks so good. Who doesn't want clean air and water? Who doesn't want to be vibrant, livable? Who doesn't want change, positive change? These are all rhetorical terms. They're all manipulation and jargon terms. And this is about erecting a totalitarian state. And I know you know it. The United States Patriot Act, the U.S. Patriot Act, and the National Defense Authorization Act are part of United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. I never have gotten off of my topic once. All of this is totally and completely related and integral to this plan. Inventory and control. The FBI now, without a warrant, can get your hotel records, your bank records, your internet records, and your telephone records without a warrant. Unreasonable search and seizure. You get searched at the airport as if you're a criminal. I get patted down every single time I'm there. I always ask them, I say, when they're doing it, I say, have you asked yourself if there's anything that you won't do for the money? Have you asked yourself if you have any limit? Is there anything you won't do that they tell you to do? That keeps me in there about an extra half hour. I know you know about that little spy thing. You know, they're talking about having little spy drones that are the size of a fly. But right now they do have a drone the size of a hummingbird, right? There's one, it's got, full visual, full audio, right? And I saw this thing and I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. We're probably going to use it for Afghanistan or so, going in and out of those caves or something like that, right? So I get this newspaper article about it. I get down to the bottom of the article. I'm reading about this little hummingbird thing that's a spy, flies in and out of your windows. It says, no, that's a prototype. It's not likely to look like that when we roll out the real deal because that's a rare bird in, say, New York City. New York City. They're talking about domestic surveillance. All totalitarian states share the same characteristics. We think that it can't happen here. It is happening here. We don't know what to look for. Because we're not out in the street with tanks and guns, we think it's not happening. It is happening. It's as if there's been a football game going on for the last 20 years, and they're out there making touchdowns, and we're having a kegger out in the parking lot. Well, now we're out, we got our helmets and our pads on, and we're up on the board. We're finally up on the board. And we are fighting this across the nation. We have a huge country. We don't even know what goes on half the time in the other town. You will not read this in the newspaper because 5 megacorporations own all of your media. There is a disinformation campaign going on to smear people like me, to call us conspiracy theorists, to say that we have a black helicopter hovering over our head or some idiocy like that. It's like, is there a problem being able to discern what objective reality is? This is true. This is documented. This looks like Sustainable Communities Initiatives. This is what this is. It looks like Granite State Future. All totalitarian states share the same characteristics. Total control of property and means of production. Total information and surveillance. Loss of free speech. Restricted movement. Control of educational systems. And of course, they share the same philosophy, that it's all for the common good. The individual is selfish. It's all for the fatherland. It's all for the homeland. It's all for the homeland. You believe we say that? They also share the Spartan present. Conserve. You're too fat. You eat too much. You use too much. You drive too much. Your house is too big. Restrict. Pull in. Conserve. You know, I've hardly ever bought anything new. My partner is a general contractor. She built a house, a 2-story house, out of recycled materials. Do I think that's bad? No, I think it's great. This is not about conservation. That is not what this plan is about. What else do totalitarian states share? They share the vision of the glorious future. The skies are always going to be blue. We're going to be living in our smart growth, drinking coffee in the downstairs coffee shop. Nobody's going to be working. It's going to be great. Going to be riding our bicycles. There goes the train. Yeah, everything's great. What else do they share? Terror. The war on terror is a war on us. Communism, fascism, Nazism. It's all for the fatherland. It's all for the common good as defined by our rulers. So who's doing it to you? Here's removing the roadblocks. How to make sustainable development happen now. B of A, University of California, the American Bar Association. Excuse me. National Association of Realtors on Common Ground. Smart growth. All full of smart growth. Universities. Here's Geography 300. Sustainability for the Common Good. 3 credits. Course. It's a core course for the BA. That happens to be Oregon State University, but I'm sure you have something here. HEALS. I told you about healthy eating, active living. It's supposed to be all about eating your apple a day, but instead it's about updating your general plan and adopting zoning ordinances. The natural step approach. Natural step. You're going to see that. 1,000 Friends of, whether it's Wisconsin, Connecticut, New Jersey, Hawaii. These are groups that pressure. They are funded by corporations, and they pressure for smart growth and for the wildlands. Fusion centers, you know about that 1 million square foot center that's being built in Utah. That is to retain all of your documents, all of your phone calls, all of your internet records. Well, we're not going to use it, and what are you worried about? Are you a criminal? Well, you probably are, because so many things are being made crime now. In fact, in the town that I live in, it's against the law to smoke in your apartment. Yeah. They want you obedient and quiet, no dissent. No, that's on the way. No drive-throughs, because you're fat. I guess you should be able to ride your bike through there. I don't know why you can't, but no drive-throughs. You're going to see this land use that is more and more and more restrictive. Climate action plans. That's part of your master plan. They will be adopting those climate action plans. You have to read these plans carefully. Bicycle coalitions are the shock troops for smart growth. They are actually advocacy groups that are brought together. They are brought together under leadership conferences where they are taught to agitate for smart growth. The Lung Association has an advocacy arm for smart growth. Unions. AFL-CIO in 2001, they said, we repudiate sprawl and we endorse smart growth. Why? Because most of their members live in urban areas. Walmart is a partner. Schools, universities, you're going to get loyalty points, if you haven't seen those yet. Asset-based community development, that came out of Chicago. Obama and Michelle Obama studied asset-based community development. What is that? That is, you are the asset. You will be mapped with your 12-page, 11-page questionnaire asking all details of your life, every element of your life, your aspirations, your goals, your skills, your talents, everything about you, put onto a GIS document with your physical location, asset-based community development, and then you will be doing your mandatory volunteering. Mandatory volunteering, don't you love it? They have the best rhetoric. Last time I thought about that, it was like, mandatory volunteering sounds like slavery to me. Right. That's right. So, this is what it's about. I mean, this stuff, of course, it's extremely difficult to believe, right? I don't blame you if you feel overwhelmed, because who doesn't? This isn't an assault on us. It's an attack on us. This is a bloodless coup. It's actually an administrative coup d'etat. And it's being implemented through regulations. Awareness is the first step in the resistance. Without knowing what's happening, we have been manipulated through our educational system with outcome-based education. All across our country, we have planners who have been brought up in this, trained in this, who are indoctrinated in this until it's almost like a cult. There's no silver bullet for it. We have to just educate ourselves. You're in the legislature. Alabama passed SB 477, which is, I mean, just think about the title of this thing and think about, are we in the United States or what? Due Process for Property Rights Act. You gotta love it. No infringement on the property rights with policies that are traceable to Agenda 21. No money to or from any organizations that are related to Agenda 21. That was passed and signed into law by the governor. I'm sure about 20 minutes later they started litigation on that. It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. But government would be suing? I don't know. Wouldn't that be interesting? I think we should be suing the federal government. But I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. This is, we have consultants who are charging millions of dollars for this plan that is the same plan all across the country and all across the world. Millions of dollars. Think about this. Your small economies are shrinking all the time. More and more rules and regulations for agricultural people, more and more rules and regulations for industrial people. Your constituents are struggling to keep their heads above water. And then your government, your local governments are paying consultants for these plans. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to consulting firms for these plans. Restrictions and regulations, they have to be defunded now. We need to call a halt to this. We're doing it all across the nation. People are standing up and speaking out across the country. Legislators, I speak to many, many elected officials, and all of them say, what can we do? We all need to get together. People who have ideas for what to do need to get those ideas out there. I don't have the answer. The answer that I say is that we need critical mass. We need more and more people to understand what's going on so that we can bring pressure to bear on our legislators, because those legislators who are not here today, who don't understand what is going on, those people need to be made aware. And then they need to know that if they are not on board with this and they are not fighting this, that the people are going to take them out of office. This is what is happening. This is a huge movement. It's a true grassroots movement, and you won't read about it in the paper, but it is there, and it's growing all the time. I crisscross the nation. It's my third time on the East Coast in the last 4 weeks. I'm all over the country. It is happening everywhere. Larger and larger and larger groups are becoming aware of this. So you want to do one other thing, and that is huge corporations are part of this. There is a place where this is not a partisan issue. I told you I'm a liberal Democrat. This is not a left-right issue. It's not, we're flashing our gang colors here. This is an American issue. And when you're talking to people who are on the left, who are liberal, who are Democrats, you want to talk about the fact that this is a corporatocracy put together by the 1%, that we're looking at restrictions on our food. We're talking about school debt, tremendous debt. This is part of it, sinking our economy. We're talking about the banks. we're talking about smart meters, which is a very good wedge issue, an opening, because this is part inventory and control of United Nations Agenda 21. These are places where we can come together. We need to work together on this. So I encourage you to also recognize that there are major corporations that are giving grants. Siemens Corporation was a German corporation about to go under, about to go bankrupt prior to World War II, until they were rescued by Hitler, who generously granted them slave labor from the concentration camps and money for technology. Siemens partially funded Growing Smart legislative guidebook. They also they are a big solar, they are light and heavy rail, smart grid, and they give grants. That's a lot of money there. IBM, biometrics, they also partnered with the Nazis during World War II. They're the ones who did they're the ones who made it possible to keep track of all the prisoners. Those numbers on the arms, it wasn't you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3. It related to the camps and where you were going to be and what you were going to do. They tattooed people with numbers that corresponded with the IBM computers and those punch cards. They made a wholly owned subsidiary in Germany. They are now doing biometrics to track us by our eye. This is a worldwide totalitarian plan. This is a fascist plan, and it is in progress right now. And there is nothing that is more important to us as Americans right now than to get on board and fight this together. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. So thank you so much for giving me this time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
I got a bunch.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay. Hope I can answer.
I'm a selectman in my town also.
Okay.
So I deal with the Nashua Regional Plan. You mentioned the Southwest is a Nashua area too. I got a couple questions as it relates to some of the things we've done. I haven't approached them about Agenda 21, and they've denied Agenda 21.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple of things that we have done and have experienced that I want to share with you and get your input. One is there was a push to get all towns to bulk buy energy to get a reduced price.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't part of that agenda, is it? I mean, this to me very common sense is that we can get electricity cheaper by bulk buying.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, it sounds good to me. What I see is the community choice aggregation, which is something new, which is where the community, the town, municipality, the county itself produces the energy through either solar arrays or wind, and there's no limit on what they can charge. And of course, distribution is still through your utility provider. So this sounds like something entirely different.
We also applied for a grant for mixed use, which at first I thought was, I'd like to learn more about it, but it actually morphed into an ordinance. We have town ordinances. Now, when you mentioned that these mixed use had to have a business above, you know, with residential above it, I mean, we haven't got that far, but this money that they have now got for a grant, is this the money that you're referring to? That
likely, very likely. And that is what mixed use is. It's a mix of uses. And it's subsidized, right? It's going to be subsidized.
It's come from somewhere.
Right.
I don't know
and
where
so, you know, it's like you want to ask yourself, I mean, this is also low-income housing providers are very much a partner in this. Enterprise Community Development and LISC are big low-income housing providers. What they're doing is they're glutting the market with these units, and they're being paid sometimes $300,000 a unit for a unit that you could go out and get for $150,000 on the market.
That was my final question, because I'm the person that has been advocating this bill for the last 2 years, and that is workforce housing. And it has morphed into something to get passed, which is a limit on the maximum amount or minimum amount, but making it deeded so that it has to stay workforce housing. Is workforce housing part of it?
Yeah, it is. You know, I'll tell you something. I'm an appraiser. I don't appraise houses. I appraise big things, and shopping centers or refineries, things like that. And as an appraiser, a designated appraiser, I have attended, of course, for my continuing education, I have to take courses, and I've attended the courses in low-income housing valuation, right? And what they do is they have basically they sell low-income housing tax credits.